Brazil is the world's biggest exporter of beef, and its people are among the world's biggest beef eaters per capita. Clearly, it's got a prime stake in the economy. That's why Brazilians are losing appetites and business over a government crackdown on rotten meat.
This scandal leaves us really worried, and now we are scared. Who can we trust?
I think the authorities should watch the situation closer because this can have repercussions on the country, on the future of our exports.
We have fixed suppliers who don't appear in the scandal, but we would like information on the origin of the meat.
Operation Weak Flesh began over the weekend, and authorities have already sealed off a number of meat processing plants. At least 30 people have been arrested for selling rotten meat and using poor quality ingredients in violation of laws. But perhaps the biggest cause for concern is that many government officials are accused of turning a blind eye to this scandal for years. As news of the raids spread, countries that import Brazilian meat have raised concerns over its quality. President Temer hosted a barbecue for foreign diplomats to show there's no cause for concern, but many people are still hungry for answers.
I worry about that. Brazil is a huge food exporter. We hold 7% of the international food market. So if there was a strong reaction and those countries decided to ban our products, that would create a huge crisis in Brazil.
Political uncertainty and falling oil revenues have left the economy bare-boned. Now the rotten meat scandal is threatening to cull another major industry. Mobin, Nasir, TRT World.
So for more on this, TRT World's editor-at-large Craig Capiters joins me now from Paris. Craig, we've been here before. It's another scandal in Brazil. This time, though, China has temporarily banned meat imports from Brazil. The EU has been weighing in on this. Tell us what the reaction has been from the EU, from where you are.
Well, you can't cover this up with more ketchup. Look, a shrug over here in the EU is the usual response to charges of corrupt Brazilian politicians. But that's changed this time because what you've had here, Azar, is 1,000 police and military officers swooping down on about 200 slaughterhouses in an operation called Operation Weak Flesh, accusing these individuals of selling rotten animal protein. This is a big deal because it's not only for the Brazilian people who have to eat this stuff, but because Brazil is a very troubled economy right now, as we all know, and the beef industry is worth to them over $12 billion a year in exports. This just can't afford to be corrupted right now, or Brazil is going to end up as a failed state.
Tell us a little bit more about the wider potential economic impact on this. As you mentioned there, a massive industry in Brazil. What are the likely ramifications of this?
Well, first of all, I think this rancid meat scandal is part of the Rio 2016 Olympic legacy, where they were supposed to spend only $5 billion on the games and ended up spending $20 billion, and it was all mired in corruption and bad arithmetic. Now, on top of this, you're looking at a country with a national debt of $750 billion. $71 billion a year is being spent just on interest. You have over 12% unemployed, more than 20% live below the poverty line, and what the Brazilians are now left with is a clearly feckless government now endangering their health and the health of their foreign markets due to more what? Avarice and woe, greed and corruption. As you said, we've heard this story before, and what's remarkable, Azar, is this investigation has been going on for 2 years. So there is reason for the Chinese and the EU to worry about bringing Brazilian beef to their country.
This is slightly different, though. I mean, in the previous scandals that we've covered, you've got fairly arcane issues coming through that perhaps the public couldn't kind of fully grasp. This is something that affects everybody. This affects everyone's dinner plate, essentially.
Well,
is this
yeah,
going to have a much bigger political impact, do you think, than the previous scandals we've seen?
As our, you know, that is the proverbial great question, the only question. And I was calling around today to ask various diplomats about this. And what I kept hearing over and over, who are you going to call now in Brazil? Ghostbusters? There's really no government there left anymore of, or I should say a government of competent individuals who can take the bull by the horns, or in this case by the carcass, and clean up the mess. Because as infected as the beef is, the past couple of years has shown that the politicians in Brasilia are perhaps even more infected and rotten to the core than the beef they're selling to their own people and exporting around the world.
So let's turn this around a little bit. Let's look at the industry, the global meat industry. And it is a global industry. How prone to corruption is this industry?
Much less than many people might think, because the vast majority of governments have responsible checks and balances, whether it's the EU, the United States, Canada, or Mexico, Japan, name a country, to ensure that the beef that arrives in the supermarket and on your restaurant table is not infected with anything, that it's good beef. Remember the mad cow disease situation in the UK a few years ago? Remember how quickly the British government shut that down? Well, that's not taking place in Brazil. Of course, a lot of, developing countries have less stringent regulations, but you would expect that Brazil, the world's largest exporter, would have regulations.
Indeed.
They don't.
Craig Capitas in Paris, thank you ever so much, as ever.